And I was like, if this thing is so potent to a point where it can defeat giants of debating, who am I as just a tiny little boy from Palapet to indulge in this thing? So
Yeah.
that was an entirely different atmosphere, to be honest. And I think I remember there was a point in day two where I literally got panic attacks.
No, that's very good. I think some of these kids deserve their flowers.
Yeah.
Sometimes as the older generation, not to say I'm even too old, but you can get stuck in a bit of nostalgia and not realize how good these
Mm.
kids are. All right, hello everyone. So, welcome to the Shafts podcast, the show that takes you into an immersive journey into the world of African debate. I'm your host, Erasmus Segbefia, and I couldn't be more thrilled that you are listening in. In this episode, we want to dive into a myriad of issues and uncover certain truths, certain stories, expert insights, and thought provoking discussions. So, whether you're a seasoned enthusiast or you're a curious newcomer, our aim is to spark your curiosity and leave you inspired to come back for more. So, on today's show, we have a very, very, very special guest. He's one of the most respected debaters within Africa. His CV is quite long, but at the moment, his face is a CV. When you see him, it does say all about him. I'll give him a chance for him to introduce himself, but I'd just like to say just a little bit about him. I mean, outside of debate, he is a financial modeling and valuation analyst, as well as a business intelligence and data analyst. He is currently also a business strategy and investment student at the African Leadership University, ALU, in Kigali, Rwanda. He's also a marketing and accounts manager at Visual Sprouts, a branding and signage company that is based in Papalaye, Botswana. And I hope I did pronounce that right. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, with a rousing welcome, let us welcome Boemo. Welcome, Boemo.
Thank you so much, Erasmus, and also thank you for the opportunity to be on the Shaft podcast and be part of what I believe is a revolutionary movement that is aimed at preserving the memories of the sport that we all love so much. In terms of my introduction, I think we've already done quite a good enough job. So I'm from Palape. I've been debating for more than a decade now. So I'm one of those people that are regarded as dinosaurs, as they would like to call me. So I think that's just it about me. I think some of the things we'll mention them or discuss them as we continue with our conversation. So I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm very very happy that you're here. I think it is people like you who give grace to the podcast, and I think you touched on the right issues over here because when we think about African debating, we just like to think it's just for the last few years. So when people like you come out and say you've been debating for the past 10 years, I think it tells us of the rich history of debating because I think to the outside world Africa is still just a newbie as sort of a sprouting or emerging circuit, and everyone wants to say we are new, we are just now coming out onto the world stage. So I believe through this episode and through the podcast in general, we would be able to uncover some of our greatness and then also set the foundation and the base for future discussions. All right. So I don't want to waste much time with this, and I want you to begin to tell us your story. How did you get into debates, first of all? But even before you give us that, who would you say, what would people remember you the most for within debates?
Wow. I think that's a loaded question, but to try and break it down, I think maybe let me just take you to not many years ago when I first joined the sport. I used to play chess. I think I started playing chess from the age of 5 because my elder sister, who I was staying with, was a math teacher. So she thought it was going to be maybe good for me to become more creative in terms of my thinking as well as my strategy. So she bought me a chessboard and I fell in love with chess. And then fast forward when I got to high school now, I couldn't even get a chance to be on the chessboard because some of the guys I found there were some of the guys that I used to give something whooping to in junior school. So they didn't allow me time to be on the chessboard until this friend of mine, Tirodiapo, one day he finds me just seated there because I was just tired of going there and not being able to play. And then he said, "Don't you want to go try something out?" I was like, "What's that?" And then he says, "Debate." In my mind, I always thought debate was for people who thought they knew English and people who thought they were better than others. So I went into the debate session, and then the coach by that time, Mr. Jerry, said because there was a seat that was missing, they needed a member of the team. He said, "No, you can just sit there and debate." So ironically, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, I was only able to speak for 15 seconds. Imagine 15 seconds.
That's a
Mentioned my
record.
name and the position I was in because I was second speaker in the world school style. And then I sat down. And then Mr. Lee said, "No, there's something about you that I like. Please come back again next time." And also,
Wow, after 15
after
seconds.
15 seconds. So after that, I think I also, because I saw some of the seasoned guys debate, I was like, "No, this is really interesting. It's something that's thought provoking. It allows you to express yourself." I came back, debated 30 seconds, eventually was able to debate for 5 minutes. So I think that's how I fell in love with debate. And from there on, I just went on up until I got to the University of Botswana, and I was able to now join competitive debating at senior school level. So I think that's just my story, how I ended up in the debate circuit or in the debate sport itself. So yeah, I think that's as much as I can say with regards to my story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's very interesting because when we think about Boemo, we don't remember you for speaking 15 seconds.
Definitely.
And this is yes, this is someone who, from an African perspective, also you have ascended to the highest levels that anyone can attain within debate. So I think these are the kind of stories that we really, really want to hear, and we really, really want to continue to inspire us. But even after speaking for 15 seconds, and I'm sorry I'm dwelling on it so much because like it's really enthusing. How did you move from that to winning PAUDC in 2014? Talk to us what the process was like.
Wow, I think this is where now I have to introduce the second set or group of people that really gave me a solid foundation for me to be able to ascend to even think of winning PUDC. So the University of Botswana Debate Masters Association. So during that time, this was a closely connected family of individuals. They were not just debaters. You know, we would hang out together, we would visit each other's families. So I think from there on, I was able to get a more sense of belonging. And I think at that point, it was when the debate rivalry was at the highest, especially down in the south, where we had the Wits University, we had the University of Cape Town, we had the University of the Free State, and they were consistently winning. So we had a discussion amongst ourselves, and we said, how can we get better? And I think we were able to, or fortunate enough, we were able to have people like Humphrey. Back then, now he's Dr. Humphrey Busi, so I need to respect the title.
Wow.
So eventually, I partnered Humphrey after I think maybe 2 years where I just bounced from partner to partner and I couldn't find stability. So in 2014, that's when I started partnering Humphrey. And he also said, there's something about me that he thinks can be unearthed. Because I think at that point, I still didn't see myself maybe even making semi-finals or finals. So I just saw myself as someone who goes to a tournament, breaks, drinks yaka, and then has a lot of fun. So at that point, the first time I partnered Humphrey, I think, was in 2014 for the Southern African Nationals Debate Championships. And Humphrey is such a competitive guy. And I think that is true for him in the debate circuit when he was still active, and now even in life as a doctor. So because I was shy of the level of competition at that time, I personally wanted to register for English as second language. And then Humphrey told me, no, we're going to debate English as first language. So after we had this discussion, I was like, no, Humphrey is crazy. I'm not going to listen to that. I went and approached the TEP team guys and told them, no, I want to change, register as ESL. So he might have anticipated I was going to do that. He went back and registered us for EFL. So unfortunately, we got knocked out in the quarterfinals, and I think we lost to worthy competitors because I think in that room we had Saul Makaiser, and some of the guys that really went on to win some of the major things in debate and in life. So from there on, in my own individual space, I was like, no, I think I'm tired of losing. I think I do have the potential to win. And I have a really supportive partner in Humphrey and a foundation in the University of Botswana Debate Masters Association that can allow me to win. So that's when now I started really investing in my development as a speaker. And I think this was the time where we had the guys from Monash, the guys who taught us.
Yes.
So that's when I really started thinking,
Yes.
no, this is something that I can actually do. So from getting knocked out in the quarters in 2014, I think less than 6 months later, it was now time for PUDC. So we thought we were in the right frame of mind for us to at least make a final. I think that was just our objective when we got there. So fast forward, we went to PUDC and we met some really competitive speakers at that point, and I think that's where the height of the competition really was intense. And then somehow we kept on bubbling in the middle rooms, and then ultimately we broke. And then from there on, Humphrey was like, no, now we don't need to take our foot off the pedal. We can just go all the way and win PUDC. And little did I know, we went
Mm.
on and in one of the most highly competitive PUDC finals, in my own opinion, where we had Michael McLean, and the guy was a champion for Whoopid. I think in 2012, he won Whoopid with Chris Wood. And then we also had the defending
Wow.
champions in Yesh and Dan Koda. Then we had Oliver Dixon and Nolutando Yeni in closing government and we were in closing
Yeah.
opposition. So the secret was, I don't remember us losing from closing opposition when I partnered Humphrey. I think that's where the secret was. So I think that the journey, if I can just maybe take a slight pause there, yeah.
No. I think it's an incredible story. Also because the speakers that you do mention, I personally did not meet all of these speakers, but I had stories about Ashudane and his partner. I had lots of stories, especially about SADC debates. But I think where I want to pivot and where I want us to talk about a bit more was that progression within the circuits. Because for those of you who don't know Botswana is quite a small country. So Botswana is not like the biggest country within SADC, and you are from Botswana and you are from the University of Botswana. And I know within that period, there were students from the University of Cape Town who used to come in their numbers, not like today where they just refused to come to PAUDC. And like you said, the rivalry was top notch. How was Botswana able to craft its way into SADC and into PAUDC and etch their names in history?
Well, I think the story is quite interesting because when we're trying to establish our identity as a club or as a debate society in a country of around 2.2 million people, with maybe just two or three universities attending PUDC as well as nationals, we came up with this idea because we were in a circuit where people had like character names. This university was known as the West Lions. University of the Free State were nicknamed the Cheetahs. One time in the library, we were just researching. We thought, no, we need a name, guys. We need a name. So we came up with the name Wolf Nation, as in wolves. We thought, no, wolves
Oh,
are fiercely competitive animals that we think if they were to be put in a cage with maybe lions and cheetahs, they would be able to stand their ground. So we invested heavily in our training program because I think this is something that a lot of institutions back then were doing, and we felt like we were lacking in that department. So we had to craft an effective training program that we followed to the latter. And we were able to measure the progress of each and every individual within the society because we strongly believed that
mm,
you don't leave any man behind. So it wasn't good enough that
mm,
Humphrey and I were good, maybe excellent debaters in our union, while others are left behind. So we felt like we needed to be at a level where anyone can just knock out everyone in a given time. So I think that's how we're able to kind of like gain a foothold in Southern African debate as well as ultimately the African continent when we won PUDC. it was simply because we needed an ethos and some kind of identity that we can say this is us. And if we maybe perform to a level that doesn't meet the expectation of what it means to be a wolf, then we would have failed. That's when we even sparked the rivalry itself, because we used to have this phrase that wolves don't lose sleep over lions. So that was
Yeah.
a direct
Yeah.
challenge to Wits University itself, because we wanted to reach the high standards that Wits University for so long had been able to reach, and Free State also, as well as the University of Cape Town. So I'm not sure if University of Cape Town had maybe like a mascot or a nickname, but I damn sure know that those were the people you'd want to debate against and you'd want to win against for
Yes.
you to be given the recognition that is worthy of being called a wolf. Because I think maybe just to quickly wrap up on this point, in 2013, the most interesting fact about 2013 Nationals, which was hosted at the University of the Western Cape, I hope now people
Mm.
do realize that I am indeed a dinosaur. We were shocked when the teams that were proceeding to the English as first language final were all UCT teams. They held a training session in a nationals final. Imagine. So I think that was like a shock to a lot of people in the second. They know we can't let this thing happen. This should be the first and last
Yeah.
time that it happens. So I think those are some of the things that pushed us to want to maybe reach higher levels in terms of competitive debating as a union.
Wonderful. I mean, the reason I love this story is because if you think about it, Africa as a circuit can be able to emulate this also and demonstrate that on the world stage. And I think this is something that we've been trying to say all of the time. So stories like these are very, very important for us in being able to craft our path forward. I want to divert a little bit and bring in West Africa because I heard the stories from 2014 Limpopo, and I know the top breaking team from I think it was just one team that broke, or the top breaking team from West Africa was Edupuku and Aurelia. Um, I'd love to have those two on the show one day, but the stories of what we heard was utter domination, especially by SADC, and we all know that SADC has been dominating debates for a very, very long time. I think the only thing West Africa brought back was Yaka. uh, there were stories of how our people got in touch with Yaka and their lives were touched. They never felt the
Yeah.
same anymore. And today, the stories of Yaka, thanks be to God, it's not just stuck within South Africa or the African continent. We are
Mm.
global. We are global now. Would you want to tell us? I don't know if you're more of a socials person or you're more of I came there to win, so I'm studying in my room like Andrews for every socials. But can you tell us some of those famous Yaka stories, some of those moments within the tournaments, especially within SADC and especially within SADC PAUDC?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the interesting thing about me is that even in my decade plus years of debating, I've never tasted Yaka. Because I think when I first
Oh
got into
no.
competitive debating in 2011, no, 2012 nationals, where I partnered Oliver Dixon from Face University because I didn't have a partner. So we were not eligible to
Mm.
break, even though I think we had 17 points, which was good enough to break, but we didn't break because we were a composite team. So I saw what Yaka did to some of the people I looked up to getting into the circuit and some of the veterans that I looked up to. And I was like, if this thing is so potent to a point where it can defeat giants of debating, who am I as just a tiny little boy from Palapet to indulge in this thing? So that's when I decided to stay away from Yaka. But over the years, I do attend socials, and I think our union, we were not just competitive in the debate room, we were also competitive outside the debate room in social spaces, because we were
I can
usually the
attest to that.
first people to get to the socials night, and we were literally the last people to leave. I remember in Cape Town Nationals, when we went to Lawn Street at this club, we had to be forced out of the club at 6 a.m. because they were now closing. So I think I'm not I wasn't just invested in the debate part because I think socials play an important role in facilitating conversations outside the maybe most serious setup of debate itself. You get to meet people, you get to converse with them in a more toned down manner, if I can say that. And some people even found love at socials. Uh,
Wow. Please tell us stories.
no,
Please
no,
tell
no,
us
no.
stories. We are
I'm
here for
not
the
sure if
juice.
I'm comfortable name dropping, but the one person that I can name drop because I know he'll forgive me. He was my partner. He was my everything. Is Humphrey. That's where Humphrey met his
Oh,
wife. So they were both debaters. So they were also part of the social space. So they were able to meet each other there. So I think to maybe just conclude on the question itself, and I think here maybe I should just bring in a bit of maybe analysis with regards to the West African circuit. Because I think, like you were
yes.
saying, the dominance or the power balance was tilted towards the southern part of Africa. And a lot of teams in West Africa or even in Upper Africa were not considered to be good, even though they were at a level where they could be good. But because of the narrative that you keep on hearing every time, when you get to a tournament, you'd be told to look for Yashadonia, you'd be told to look for Elisha, you'd be told to look for maybe Humphrey, Solofel, or you'd rarely hear people from West Africa being mentioned, even though they were at the time good people or excellent people, if I may just correct myself, that were already there in the space, like David Ejim. Because I think this is one person that was
Yes.
also influential in my growth as a speaker and as an adjudicator because I was able to connect with him. We're able to discuss even post tournament.
Yeah.
But because of the narrative, so when you play something a couple of times, if a story is told over and over again, you don't believe the counter
Yeah.
narrative that exists. That's why I think at some
Yeah.
point you guys in West Africa got pissed also, like I did, and said, no, we need to give these guys in Wall Street the middle finger and show them that we are also equally capable. So I think the power shift was a result of the hard work because I also need to give credit where it's due. I've seen people in West
Yeah.
Africa put in the work day in, day out, day out, attending tournaments consistently. Because debate is not something that you can get good by just sitting there reading. You need to practice. So I was able, as a dinosaur, I've been able to see the transition from my generation to this generation. And I think that was just a culmination of the work that people in West Africa put in. That's why you guys were able to win PUDC back to back, back to back. And that's why you're even now
Yeah.
the only two-time PUDC champion up to this day. So, yeah, I think that's just it from on that part of Yaka and West African debate.
No, no, no. That's very interesting. Obviously, we are not here to talk about me today. So so let's focus on you. But yes, I do agree, and I think the West African should I say dominance now is something that we'll be talking about in like new circuits breaking in and everything. But I just want us to sit around Southern Africa for a while. You've name dropped a couple of people. You've name dropped your partner Humphrey. You've name dropped Yashidane, Elisha, Oliver Dixon. People just don't know how scary these guys were or how good these guys were. Myself, I would admit, I didn't see a lot of them. I saw just one video of Yashidane, and I remember when I was training in 2014 for my first debate, like he had just won a
Mm.
PADC, and I could hear like horror stories of how he just entered into debates and dominated. Could you tell us a bit more about some of these guys? What were some of the wonderful things they did? What were some of their moments? What were some of the tournaments they were winning, especially on the global stage too? Because people just think it's Andrews and myself or Charity or whoever just at the world stage.
I pity people who are younger than me because I think they missed out on. I don't know if this is me being biased. I hope it's me being honest and objective. one of the best generation of debaters that I think, in my opinion, ever existed. And I think some of the guys you've already mentioned, and also, when I entered the debate space, one person that I desperately wanted to meet, or two people I desperately wanted to meet, because I had the legend of those people, how good they were, is Mighty Jamie and Dr. Atina Ngamso Estankopo. She's a doctor now also. And I think the reason why I wanted to meet these people is because at the time they were, I don't know if they were one of three or one of two teams, black teams, that were challenging the dominance of white debaters in the open or the English as first language category. Because I also remember there was Mhlanganisi as well as Zola Valashia from the University of the Free State. So at my first nationals tournament, I wanted to see these people that were willing and able to challenge the dominance of UCT, because we shouldn't make a mistake. UCT was exceptionally good, in my opinion. And it wasn't just one or two speakers. It was like the entire delegation that they bring to a tournament. You would know you don't want to meet a UCT team. But we equally had black excellent speakers like Ati Nkopo, Mhlanganisi, Zola Valashia, Mighty Jamie. I remember at my first nationals, I didn't break, by the way, like I had indicated earlier, because I was the composite team. The morning after break night, after people had yaka and I had my dose of black label, I wanted in the morning, because I think there were two black teams that broke EFL. Mighty Jamie and Ati were the one team, and then Shanganisi and Zola were the other team. I remember waking up in the morning in the cold because I wanted to see these people, because I idolized them because they were so good. So I think a lot of people in my generation were good, but you rarely hear stories about those people, because I think maybe we don't have platforms like the Shaft podcast to maybe give those people their flowers. The list is long. Later on, there was the team of Elisha Kunene as well as Lisha Gina from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I remember my first PUDC, and it was also the first PUDC. So we were both newbies in the circuit, or at PUDC. They went all the way to the final. And I think even in that final, they gave a good account of themselves. So that goes to show the wide number of brilliant speakers that we had, which is why often at times when I'm asked to make a list of the best debaters in my generation, I never know how to respond to this question, because it would be an injustice to maybe list 5 or 10 and leave others out, because we also had David Harris from the University of Cape Town. And
I've heard a lot about David Harris.
These are some of the speakers that were representing Africa at Worlds, and they were making their mark at Worlds. That goes to show you how good of a generation my generation was, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people also contributed to my development, because even in this rivalry or competition that existed, I think this was after I started climbing up the social ladder now, and people maybe started to recognize me because I was Humphrey's partner. For the longest time, this was the ghost or the monkey on my back that I needed to deal with, because people would recognize me as Humphrey's partner. They wouldn't even know my name, but my name just has 5 characters. So because of Humphrey, I was able to access some of these social circles. And we used to have this tradition that we did. So on arrival day, when we get to the tournament venue, we'll just have a meeting of all the speakers that we think can win the tournament, and we'll just have a discussion amongst ourselves. We would identify the strengths and weaknesses of every individual on that circle, so that when we get into a debate room, we are more comfortable and familiar with each other even before we start speaking. So I think that's some of the things that we did, because beyond the rivalry on the podium, we were friends. It didn't mean we were like enemies. No, we were just rivals. Maybe Lincoln said the former American president, when he said, our passion may have strained, but that shouldn't break our bond of affection. So we still had a soft spot for each other, even though we were fiercely competitive in the debate podium. So my generation, I think, had brilliant speakers, and that's how we started making a mark in the world through UCT, through WIDS, and some of these other international tournaments that they were able to and represent Africa at.
I mean, that's brilliant. I'm not well informed if you ever got to participate in Worlds as a speaker, but I know you were Worlds DCA, which in itself is a huge thing, especially within these parts. And yeah, being in the space, I understand what it means to have that kind of position. But what was the difference that you saw? What do you think was I don't want to say was preventing us, but what was the difference that you saw which you thought Africa was lacking in?
Well, fun fact, I have participated at Worlds before as a speaker, but I think it's
Oh, nice. Tell us
part of
about
my
it.
record that people overlook because it's the dark side of my record. So I do have also as a speaker. In 2015, immediately after we won PUDC, we went to Malaysia Worlds, Humphrey and I. I think we also with Charity as our adjudicator, Charity Makal. So
Yeah.
that was an entirely different atmosphere, to be honest. And I think I remember there was a point in day two where I literally got panic attacks, and Humphrey, being the doctor that he was training to be, had to give me emotional support in order to maybe bring me back to a point where I could debate. So the first day went just fine. I think we had 7 points out of 9, and
That's
there was a lot of hype around us because people were saying African champions, the golden boys of Africa, because they just won PUDC a
yes.
couple of weeks back. So the first day we got 7 out of 9 points. Then came day two because now this is where the tournament really starts. Because Worlds is just a big tournament. Even if you are power paired in day one, it's not really a true reflection of the power pairing or the quality of the.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a wild guess how many points we got in day two?
Did you get 9 out of 9?
No, 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 no. We literally got 1 point day two because now it had hit the fan, and we were meeting some of the best minds in the world. And I remember there was a session where we met the former Malaysian Minister of Youth, Said Sadiq. There was one round
Wow.
where we had Said Sadiq in that room, and I think the level of debate or the quality of debate in terms of individual speech did show me some of the areas where we lacked at that particular point in my debate journey as well as a second. Because I think at Worlds, during that time, people were more concerned about matter or content as opposed to style and strategy. And I think the other advantage is that, and this is something that maybe over the years, even the adjudicators themselves have been able to maybe move away from, just your eloquence as a speaker. I know this is a battle that we've been fighting as the black people or people of color at Worlds to say that sometimes we are
Mm,
marked down because of the way we speak. We can't be as eloquent as the other people are. So during that time, I
mm,
was able to recognize that, how you speak, it also leaves an impression on the adjudicators themselves. How you sound.
mhm.
That is why I think after that, we heavily invested on our style and strategy as a team. Because I think that was our biggest downfall in day two. Because now, day three, even though it was more of a lost cause now, we were able to collect 8 out of 9 points. So I think if we had been able to maybe just keep that momentum and maybe had been better prepared, knowing the dynamics of Worlds, I think we could have stood a better chance. But I think then versus now, I think maybe a lot has changed and maybe little has changed. A lot has changed in the sense that African or just Black people and people of color in general, they have been able to invest in their training to ensure that some of the things that were disadvantaged or they were marked down on back then, they're not marked down on right now. That is why I think I was particularly proud of the recent performance by African teams at the Madrid Worlds. Because it shows you the progress that African debate has made over the years. And I think that was something that back then in my generation or the other generation that I belong to was lacking in terms of having the skills for them to be able to compete at Worlds. So I think that's the transition that I've been able to maybe see and monitor as someone who's stuck around for quite some time.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the logistical challenge, especially for Africans, in just attending Worlds, does not give you the opportunity for trial and error.
Definitely.
Like, I think that the difference was you had teams who were doing Oxford IV, Cambridge IV, other tournaments around Europe, and getting to familiarize themselves, and then coming to Worlds. So you coming all the way from Papulaye
It's
in Botswana.
Palati.
Oh my God! I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm
It's
not.
fine.
I'm, so you coming all the way from Palapi in Botswana to just it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. I understand. But Boemo, I want to put you on the spot.
Okay, yeah, shoot.
Who amongst the new generation and amongst the new generation, and I mean when I say new generation, I would say 2 to 3 past PAUDCs competitors or 2 to 3 years. Um, who would you say is your most favorite speaker, or maybe is the best speaker?
Okay, maybe let's not use the term best because people are going to use my
Not 10.
opinion now as a yardstick to take jabs at each other. I know it's super competitive these days and people do take this thing seriously.
Yes. And that's exactly why I'm putting you on the spot, because I believe that you're a competitive person, and like you said, when people work hard, they need to be
Yeah.
rewarded. So I think you recognize that in your eyes who is working hard and therefore needs to be rewarded.
Ah,
Okay, let me give you some room. Say two best
whoa.
speakers. Two.
This is why I don't like lists, Erasmus, because lists restrict you. And I hope people don't take this as an indication to say that other debaters are not brilliant. But I think maybe just to rephrase the question so that I can answer it without indicting myself, I would say the two speakers that impress me the most, they might not be the best, but they impress me the most in terms of their competitive edge, in terms of just their overall style and strategy and how much effort they put into knowing things. I think the first one that comes to my mind has to be Ayafa. And I think
Oh,
maybe I'm a bit biased because we just attended PUDC a couple of months back and I saw him in that thing
yeah.
in that tournament. So I'd say Ayafa, and then I would also say Elisha. So
Oh, brilliant.
if I were to rank, which I'm not doing, and me mentioning Ayafa first and Elisha second isn't me ranking, it's because I was able to see them debate against each other. I think maybe more than 2 rounds. The first round was it round 5, the one about genetically modified foods being banned in Kenya,
Yes.
and then the final motion. So that's where I was able to appreciate the level of, maybe I should say, strategy that Ayafa was able to use to win against Elisha. And I think
Mm.
in both rounds, he was able to come up on top in round 5, I think, and then in the final. So he used this technique that Humphrey and I used to use back in the days, and I think we used it
Mm.
also for PUDC when we won. You know, when the debate starts as something and then it ends as something totally different. I think Ayafa
Yeah.
is someone who masters that, and he does it in a tricky way that you won't realize that he's shifting the debate away from what it was originally at and what it's supposed to be about to where he wants it to be, and that's his comfort zone, and he's able to outcompete you there. So I think he did that to Elisha on that round and also in the final. So I would say those are the two that have impressed me the most. And I think I've been following their progress even before I met them, because I think it was my first time meeting them in Kenya. So
Yeah.
I've been following Elisha when he was back-to-back Accra Open champion, and I did see some of the videos. And I think his style also is something that I appreciate, and his level of knowledge and depth is something that I also appreciate. But I think maybe just allow me to give maybe a special mention,
Shout
yeah, a
out.
special shout out, because I think it has to be for two people, in fact, and they are women, because I think a lot of times when we craft this list, they are always male dominated because we live in a patriarchal world or something like that. Uh, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna hate myself for saying this because I used to be in this shadow. I'm gonna say something and then you're gonna remind me the name because I don't know how to pronounce the name. Elisha's partner. Uh, Yes,
Owesiamo.
Wes. I should have just said Wes. Wes, and then I would say Becky as well, because I think there
Yeah.
are two competitive people that you want to listen to in a debate, and I think the final they did demonstrate that level of competition and their worth. So I think those would be the two special shout outs I would give to, and maybe just the last one. So maybe allow me five because I don't want to get into trouble with some people.
Your list is expanding. Your list is getting
Yes,
too
it's just
big,
one last one.
Okay.
Prosper, because of what
Yeah.
he, I forgot the partner's name, what they did at Worlds. That's something
This
that hasn't been done before. And I think we need to give them credit there because I think also Prosper has, I've been able to see him develop. I think there was one debate where he was partnering Masharia. It was a final that Francois and I won against them. So I was able to see the progress that he has made. So I think let me just stop there before now I make it. Yeah,
No, no, that's very good. I think some of these kids deserve their flowers.
yeah,
Sometimes as the older generation, not to say I'm even too old, but you can get stuck in a bit of nostalgia and not realize how good these
mm,
kids are. Also, like you might think things are quite easy for them, but also not realize how very competitive things are at the
yeah.
moment. But I want to ask this: how did seeing two African teams in a World's final make you feel?
Wow.
I feel it's not talked about enough. I feel it's not talked about enough. We've not made enough noise and hype about it. But how did that make you feel?
I think it just demonstrates uh, the culmination of the efforts that as a circuit we've been able to make. And this is not taking credit away from the two teams or the four speakers themselves, because I think they exist in the circuit. And one way or the other, the circuit has contributed to them being able to lift themselves to that level. I think I felt a level of pride that I can't even find words to describe, because I think for the longest time, we were just seen as people who, yes, we can be good, but not good enough to even make a final at Worlds. So I think that moment, like you're saying, it's not talked about a lot. And I think this is something that we need to discuss a lot. We need to talk about a lot. Because imagine I don't know how Worlds has existed for how many years, but they were the first
Hmm.
African team, I think, to make any final, if I'm not mistaken.
Any final, yeah, any
So
final.
imagine there are three finals at Worlds. And after so many years, you get two teams. I hope I'm right. They're both from Ghana, right?
Yes,
You get
yes,
two teams of brilliant kids coming out of Ghana making a Worlds final, but we don't talk much about it. And
yeah,
I think I'm also part of the people who didn't talk much about it because I think I just texted them privately to say, no, congratulations on making this. But I think we didn't make it a public uproar like we did when Fanele won Worlds. But
yes,
these are our
yes,
people. These are the people that we train with on a daily basis, we debate against. And one way or the other, they also contribute to our development as individual speakers in the African continent. So I think if it's not too late and they would accept this, I think I just need to, on record, say how proud I am of the two teams that made the final at Worlds. Elisha, Wes, Prosper. Who was Prosper partnering?
Vincent
Yes,
Atapa.
yes,
Remember the
Vincent. So their names need to
yeah,
be written down in African history because
yes,
they stand alone in their own, if I could say, Mount Rushmore of African debaters at Worlds. It's just their four faces.
yes.
No one has ever been there. But we rarely talk about these things. So I just want to give them their flowers now. I hope they watch this and they do recognize that as someone who has seen the trials and tribulations of the entire African circuit for over 10 years, I couldn't be more proud that they represented us at the highest level where we are never given maybe recognition to say that we are good enough to win, we're good enough to make the final.
Yeah. I think we're not just I don't blame the world. The world will just
Mm,
move on. But even we're quick enough to move on from that. But I was in that auditorium and I've never been
mm,
more proud than
mm,
that moment. And I think that is the greatest African
mm,
moment. That is the greatest African moment we've ever had in the history of
mm,
debate. And I was just proud to be there. They came down, they were worried would they win. I was like, bro, just keep quiet. What you've done, what you've
mm,
done, no one can ever take it away
mm,
from you. And I think what that should happen, what that should be, should serve as a solid base for us building our way into the world circuits because I think we are good
mm,
enough. I don't think we brag when we say we have the men to be able
mm.
to do this. But I want to put another event in retrospect with this. I'm not sure if you were at 2019 Cape Town Worlds, but you
I was there.
must
I
you,
was
you,
there. I was
you
there.
so let's move from one world where Africa was made proud to another where Africa, I don't want to say too much about it, but not one of the moments that would forever like to remember. Could you capture what went down in Cape Town in 2019?
You know,